In 2006, about 1 million American homes went into foreclosure. 4 years later, that number was almost 4 million in a single year. By late 2009, nearly 1 in 4 American homes with a mortgage was underwater. The house was worth less than the loan on it. In Nevada, it was 2 out of 3. Millions of those buyers had signed for the same reason. Not because the house was cheap, not because the timing was right, because somewhere along the way, someone they trusted said the most expensive sentence in housing: rent is throwing money away. Quick note before we start: this is education, not financial advice. Buying a home can be a great decision. I'm not telling you what to do with your life. I'm showing you what the numbers say, because the people repeating that sentence almost never do. Here's the logic you've heard your whole life. Every month, you hand your landlord $2,000 and it's gone. Nothing comes back. No equity, no asset, nothing. Your neighbor hands the bank roughly the same amount, and part of it becomes equity, his own money, stored in his own walls. So rent makes your landlord rich, and a mortgage makes you rich. Renting is burning money. Buying is saving it. It sounds airtight. Your parents believe it. Your bank believes it. And the entire thing rests on one giant accounting error. The error is simple. It compares all of the rent to only part of the cost of owning. So today we fix the accounting. And then we run a real case, 2 neighbors, 10 years, real 2026 numbers, to see who actually ends up richer. Start with the term that should be printed on every mortgage brochure: unrecoverable costs. Money you pay to live somewhere that never comes back. A Canadian portfolio manager named Ben Felix made this framework famous, and it works like this. For a renter, the unrecoverable cost is easy. It's the rent, all of it. Everything else the renter has, the savings, the would-be down payment, stays free to grow somewhere else. For an owner, the list is longer, and most owners have never once written it down. First, property tax. In the United States, about 0.9% of the home's value every single year. You pay it whether the house rises or falls. Second, maintenance. Roofs age, headers die. Fannie Mae's standard budget is about 2% of the home's value per year, and even 1% is considered optimistic. Bankrate added up the hidden costs of owning the average American home in 2025: upkeep, taxes, insurance, the forgotten stuff, and got $21,400 a year. Not the mortgage, the extras. Third, the big one, the cost of capital. The borrowed part of your house costs interest, pure cost, exactly like rent, except you pay it to a bank instead of a landlord. And the part that's yours, the down payment, stops earning anything. It's locked in the walls. If that money could have earned 7% in a boring index fund, that missing 7% is a real cost too. You just never get a bill for it. Felix added these up for a normal market and landed on a famous shortcut: the 5% rule. Take the price of a house. Take 5% of it. Divide by 12. If you can rent the same house for less than that number, renting is likely the better financial deal, not the emotional deal, the financial one. But here's the thing, he built that rule when mortgages cost around 3%. As of July 2026, the average American 30-year mortgage costs 6.43%. Run the same logic at today's rates, and the unrecoverable cost of owning lands closer to 7 or 8% of the home's value every year, which explains a number that should end most dinner table arguments. In early 2026, the typical monthly mortgage payment in America is about 20% higher than the typical rent. In 45 of the 50 biggest U.S. metros, renting is cheaper than buying, month after month. The throwing money away option is the cheaper option almost everywhere in the country. And we haven't even touched the doors yet. Owning has an entry fee and an exit fee. Getting in costs 2 to 5% of the price in closing costs. Getting out costs 8 to 10%. Agent commissions alone still average about 5.7%. Buy the median American home, sell it some years later, and the round trip burns $40,000 to $50,000. roughly 2 years of rent, paid for paperwork. At this point, the uncle at the family dinner clears his throat. Sure, but the house goes up. Does it? This is the best part because a Nobel Prize winner spent his career on exactly this question. Robert Shiller built the index that tracks American house prices all the way back to 1890. His finding, after removing inflation, about 0.5% of real growth per year. Over more than a century, American house prices kept drifting back to the same real level. The chart isn't a rocket, it's a flat line with mood swings. A bigger study looked at 16 countries across 145 years. It's called the rate of return on everything and found the same pattern. House prices grow about 1% a year after inflation. Stocks, over the same period, returned about 7% a year after inflation. To be fair, that same study found that housing as an asset class earned almost as much as stocks in total. But nearly all of that return came from collecting rent. A landlord gets the rent. When you live in your own house, you only collect the rent you no longer pay, and you already paid taxes, maintenance, and interest for it. The price growth itself, the part your uncle brags about, around 1% real. Grandma's house didn't rise 10 times in price because houses are magic. It rose because everything rose. That's inflation, and your salary did it too. Now, here's where a smart buyer pushes back. And it's the strongest argument on the buying side, so it deserves a fair fight. Leverage. When you buy a house with 20% down, you control a big asset with a small stake. If the house rises 5%, that's a 25% gain on the money you put in. The bank multiplies your win. 1% real growth doesn't sound so weak when it's multiplied by 5. True. Completely true. Now say the second half out loud. If the house drops 10%, half of your down payment is gone. If it drops 20, your equity is 0, and you still owe everything. That's not a theory. That was 2008. 1 million foreclosures became 4 million. A quarter of mortgaged America went underwater. Leverage didn't make those houses good investments. It made them big bets, and the families inside were the collateral. So let's settle this the only honest way. A real case with real July 2026 numbers. 2 neighbors, same street. Nadia buys. The median American home costs $429,300. She puts 20% down, $86,000, plus about $13,000 in closing costs. $99,000 of savings, gone into the deal. At 6.43%, her mortgage runs about $2,150 a month. Add property tax, insurance, and a conservative 1% for maintenance, and her true cost is about $3,000 a month. Mark rents the same kind of house across the street for $2,300. He keeps his $99,000 in a plain index fund, and every month he invests the $700 he saves compared to Nadia automatically. No exceptions. 10 years pass. Let's be generous to the house. It grows 3% a year, far above its long-term record. Rents rise 3% a year too. Stocks do 7%. Their boring long-run average, 2036. Mark's portfolio sits at roughly $280,000. Liquid. He could move to another city on Tuesday. Nadia's house is now worth about $577,000. She still owes about $291,000. Her equity, roughly $286,000. On paper, she's ahead by a rounding error. Then she sells. 8 to 10% walks out the door with the agents and the fees. She nets roughly $230,000. 10 years of building equity, and the man who threw his money away is about $50,000 ahead. Now change one number and watch the story flip. Let the house grow 5% a year, and Nadia's equity jumps past $400,000. She wins, clearly. Let it grow 1%, Shiller's actual long-run number, or make her sell after 4 years, and she loses badly. And that's the real answer nobody puts on a poster. Buying isn't a rule. It's a leveraged bet on one asset, in one city, on one street. Sometimes the bet pays. That's what bets do. Before you cancel your house viewing the other side. Because it's real, and it's strong. The Federal Reserve measures household wealth. The median American homeowner is worth about $396,000. The median renter, $10,400. Not a bit less. 38 times less. Doesn't that settle it? Not quite. People with money buy houses, so the arrow points both ways. But hiding inside that number is the best real argument for buying. A mortgage is a savings plan you can't quit. Nobody skips their house payment to buy a better vacation. The bank makes sure of it. Mark only wins on my spreadsheet because he invested the difference every single month for 10 years. Most real-world Marks don't. They spend it. For millions of people, the house isn't a great investment. It's the only savings plan they'll ever actually finish. That has real value. And some things about owning never appear in a spreadsheet. Your loan payment is fixed for 30 years while rents keep climbing. Real protection. Nobody can sell the house out from under you. You can paint the walls, plant a tree, keep your kids in the same school. Those things matter. They might matter more to you than $50,000. But be honest about what they are. They're lifestyle. They're not returns. So here's the truth behind the most expensive sentence in housing. Renting is not throwing money away. It's paying for housing cleanly with full flexibility. Owning is also paying for housing through interest, taxes, maintenance, and fees, plus a leveraged bet on top, plus a forced savings plan attached. Buy the house because you want the life inside it. That's a great reason. Just stop pretending the math is automatically on your side. So what do you actually do? 4 things. First, compare honestly. Put the full cost of owning, interest, tax, maintenance, plus what your down payment could earn elsewhere, next to the real rent for a similar place. Not mortgage versus rent. Everything versus rent. Second, respect the doors. With a 10% round trip, buying only starts to beat renting after roughly 4 to 6 years in most markets. If you can't promise yourself 8 to 10 years in one place, you're not buying a home. You're renting one from the bank, with worse exit fees. Third, learn your market's price-to-rent ratio. Divide the price of a home by 1 year of rent for the same home. Under 15, buying deserves a hard look. Detroit sits near 8. Over 20, renting usually wins. San Francisco is around 36, San Jose 45. And fourth, if you rent, invest the difference automatically. The myth is only true for renters who spend the gap. Don't be the reason your uncle stays right. One line to take away. Rent is throwing money away survives because everyone who repeats it gets paid when you buy. The agent, the bank, the seller. Nobody earns a commission when you invest the difference. If this changed how you hear that sentence, subscribe. Next time, we take apart another comfortable story the money world sells you. And tell me below, what's the price-to-rent ratio on your street? Do the division. I read everything.